What's up, everyone, and welcome back to TonyMasseyCooks Live, Chef in the Spotlight. I'm so excited about tonight's show. This is the third episode of the show. If you've missed the previous two, make sure that you're subscribed to TonyMasseyCooks on YouTube. Go back and watch those episodes. Both of those chefs were amazing, and their interviews were too. But tonight, I have a really special guest tonight. This brother is very talented, extremely talented, and he's doing things that I didn't know you could do as a chef. And what I mean by that is not only is he cooking, but he has a dope podcast. Now, when I heard he had a podcast, I thought maybe he was going to do like a podcast about cooking, meaning he was going to talk about cooking. No, this brother is talking while he's cooking. And it's such an immersive, immersive experience because you actually hear him preparing food in the background. He's talking through the recipe. He's explaining things. He's breaking it down. And it's a really, I binged all of the episodes just for getting ready for tonight. So this is going to be really exciting. So, of course, there is no show without you. I appreciate you being here. If you're here, then I guarantee you somebody, one of your friends probably should be here too. So make sure that you share the link. Get the likes up. That helps with the algorithm, lets YouTube know that this is the kind of stuff that people want to see. So without further ado, I want to bring to the stage, again, a very talented chef. He goes by, his handle is Cooking with Pat Lee. Ladies and gentlemen, Chef Pat Lee. What's up, brother?
Much. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be in this show. Excited.
Great. So am I, man. We met through Deron, the chef, right? You know him pretty well.
Very talented chef, a very good brother. Honestly, one of the most creative chefs that I've seen on TikTok, on Instagram, on social media.
Man,
really class dude. Shout out to Deron.
Yeah, shout out to Deron. And again, when you talk about creative, that I watch his recipes. I'm like, man, where did you get this from? It's insane.
I know.
but your recipes now. I follow you on all of your social media platforms. Of course, I wanted to do some research to find out who you were before I interviewed you or before we had this conversation. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm going to be honest, is in your podcast, you say you're not a classically trained chef, meaning you didn't go to culinary school. However, when I look at your dishes, when I look at the foods that you're cooking, this is not home chef level. Like this is some restaurant quality food. Because even your presentation is immaculate. I mean, the way you plate food, it just makes it so appetizing. And that's one thing I notice a lot of home chefs or amateur chefs, they don't always get the plating right. So the food probably is amazing, but the presentation is kind of off. So where did you get your culinary skills if you didn't go to culinary school?
So as cliche as it sounds, I'm actually self-taught. A lot of my culinary skills just came from trial and error, from practice, from watching YouTube videos, other chefs on social media. Since I started this culinary journey, I've had a passion not only just for making my food taste good, but also look good. And in a lot of my earlier videos and a lot of my earlier pictures, I thought the plating looked good, but I was always told that maybe the lighting could be a little bit better. Maybe you could kind of be a little bit more artistic and creative in terms of how you plate things. So I'm somebody that if you tell me that I'm doing something wrong, I'm not going to take offense to it. I'll think of, okay, well, how can I make it better? How can I make it taste better? How can I make it look better? And so that led me to kind of studying how other chefs plated their food and then kind of getting the creative eye for how I saw my plating. I kind of thought of it as if I saw my food in a magazine, how would I want it to look? Like if I saw somebody's food in a magazine or in a restaurant menu, how appetizing could it look to me? And I want people to kind of get that vibe and that same energy when they look at my food.
Well, you definitely nailed it, man. I mean, we're going to go to your social media pages here in a second. So if everyone that's watching can see exactly what I'm talking about. But you are on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram as Cooking with Pat Lee. So make sure you guys go out and follow Pat on all of his social medias. and then of course the Ironcast podcast. So let's get into the Ironcast podcast real quick before we go to the food. This is such a unique and amazing idea, and on the surface, I wouldn't think it would work because cooking and food is so visual, right?
Right.
I mean, to the point where I'll post pictures of food that I made, and the immediate response is, "Where's the video? I want to see the video.
Right.
I want to see how you did this." Right. So, how did you come up with the idea of a cooking podcast that has no video element and it's you actually cooking in the kitchen? Where did that come from?
So it actually came from two concepts. The first one was when I go to sleep, or rather before I go to sleep, I'm always binge watching YouTube videos. And then of course, when you watch YouTube videos, you go into like a rabbit hole of your favorite kind of content. And my content just so happened to be cooking. And sometimes when I would watch YouTube videos, I would fall asleep with the videos and I couldn't actually see what was going on in the video, but I could hear it in my mind. And as greedy as it sounds, I would sometimes go to sleep dreaming about what recipes I could make or dreaming about what my next meal is going to be. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe other people kind of want to kind of feel that same energy too. Maybe other people would like to get the experience of how would the food look if I just heard the cooking process. And when I started doing the first couple of podcasts, I honestly thought, okay, maybe it might not take off as much. Maybe, this could be like a small niche. But then people started telling me, wow, like I actually feel like I'm in the kitchen with you cooking. Like when I hear the sounds of frying, when I hear the sounds of the pots and pans clinging, it really brings like a excitement to me in the kitchen. And the second reason why I kind of did the podcast is because, and this is a little bit more personal for me, I grew up watching MasterChef, Hell's Kitchen, a lot of the cooking shows out there, and there isn't a lot of representation for people that look like us.
Right.
So when I initially created the podcast, it had two elements. The first element was, of course, the cooking aspect. The second element was the aspect of interviewing people. But I didn't want to interview, major names or people who were already famous. I wanted to give others a spotlight to kind of showcase their talents, to tell people where they're from, similar to how you're doing right now.
Right.
And I wanted to give home cooks, I wanted to give entry-level chefs a chance to kind of grow in their own space.
Well, you nailed it, man. So I'm going to bring it up here real quick so everyone can see what we're talking about. This is the podcast. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify. Where else is it?
Right now it's on Apple and Spotify. Okay. More likely going to probably put it on Google Podcasts as well. But episode 5 is actually out now on Apple and Spotify podcasts.
Okay. So yeah, he's got 5 episodes up on Apple. And I'm telling you, so I love podcasts. I always have. I grew up with my grandfather would listen to talk radio.
Right.
And so just it's something very soothing to me. Even to this day, I'll turn a podcast on when I'm cooking because it allows me to just kind of escape or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to listen to, my thought process was I'm gonna listen to at least the first or second episode, kind of, have some talking points and things like that. Bro, right. I binged episodes because it was so good.
Thank you.
And what I mean by good is there's a story being told as you prepare the meal, right? So like with the Juneteenth episode, and I don't want to give it away for people because people really need to just hear it. But the Juneteenth episode was so amazing because you told a narrative of, how you grew up and your connection to soul food and even the fact that I guess one of your kids wasn't there at that point, but you had to make sure that he had a plate. I can't remember. Yeah. And so it like whoever said that, I agree. It's almost like you're in the kitchen, just sitting there chilling, listening to you talk, and you're just immersed in all the sounds. Like you said, the the food hitting the grease, or even when you talked about how to check to see if your grease is hot enough, and the chicken and the whole nine. It's such a great idea, but again, it feels like it shouldn't work because I can't see you, but I didn't really need to. So let's talk about the episodes themselves. What's the motivation, or what's the creative process when you go into the kitchen and decide you're going to record an episode for your podcast?
I think what makes this podcast easy and kind of goes on to the point of what you were saying that it shouldn't work is that I really don't edit anything when it comes to cooking with the podcast. Like, you hear every detail. There's even an episode of the podcast where you hear my 3-year-old babbling in the background, and I'm like, you know what? I want people to hear that. I want people to actually know every single bit of detail that goes on in the episode. If you hear me, I don't know, grease popping on me accidentally and I'm cursing, or if I'm flipping chicken, or I'm eating a piece of chicken, or if I'm using a spatula, or if you hear me taking a bite out of something, I want you to immerse yourself in that experience.
Yeah, it's just such a great thing. So if you love podcasts, and you're definitely going to love this one. If you love food and podcasts, this is the perfect collaboration of two things that I love. It's called the Cast Iron Podcast with Chef Pat Lee. You can find it on Spotify and on Apple Podcast as well. These episodes are really cool. I think my favorite definitely was the Juneteenth episode. I really like that. The Juneteenth with a bit of soul. That was a really good one. And then, of course, the Humble Beginnings. That was a good one, too, because it was very transparent. And also, I feel like anyone who learned how to cook, especially in the African-American community, most of us were taught how to cook by a grandparent or, your mom, or whatever the case may be. And I love this idea that your family was kind of like they were the bar, right? They were the litmus test for whether or not you could cook. Could you talk through the Pancake Story real quick?
I knew you was going to bring that up.
It's on the podcast. You got to listen to the podcast, but it's such a great story because I could just imagine, that seeking that validation and having this perfect thing and not thinking about anything else. So I don't want to steal your thunder. Tell us about the pancakes.
All right. So I'm 7 years old and I'm interested in cooking for the very first time. I forget if my mom was at work or she was at home, but I knew my grandparents were there and they were in the back of the house because they just finished grocery shopping. So they were resting. I didn't want to bother anybody and I wanted to cook myself something. So I couldn't find anything to cook at the moment because, it takes a process of throwing meat out, chopping vegetables and that thing. So I'm like, okay, I'll make myself a pancake. So I follow the recipe on the box to a T, pour the pancake mix, the water, vanilla extract and all that. I make my first pancake and it came out perfect, beautiful, brown, crisp edges, everything.
Yeah.
I put the next pancake on the stove and instead of watching the pancake, I run to the back of the house and tell my grandparents, look what I made. Look what I made. I made my very first pancake. And in my mind, I'm like really excited about it. But then my grandmother is like, is something burning? So then in my head, I'm going, oh no. And I run to the kitchen and the second pancake burns.
Right.
So while it was a, accomplishment for me to cook for the very first time a pancake, I ended up burning the second one. But, it's a life lesson in the story I don't mind telling people.
Yeah, no, I love it because I think that what I immediately thought about when I heard the story is how a lot of times we'll celebrate, wins or we'll celebrate victories. Right. And you can't stay in that moment too long because something else is going to come along or you left something on the stove. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I just loved how you described that perfect pancake and you just had to go show it off. And, in you showing it off and getting that validation, of course, you left the other pancake on the stove.
Unfortunately.
Great story. So tell everyone where you're from as far as in the world and how you grew up with cooking.
Sure. So I'm currently in Newcastle, Delaware, but I originally grew up in New York by way of Harlem.
Okay.
I grew up with cooking because my family has roots in the South. So when I used to go to North Carolina in the summers to visit my great grandparents, it used to be moments where I'd wake up in the morning and my mom, my aunts, my grandmother, my great grandmother would cook everybody breakfast. And to me, food always had a sense of love, a sense of family, and a sense of togetherness. And that's always been something that I felt brought me to wanting to cook,
Hmm.
because I always saw when they cook meals, and I even mentioned it in my podcast, when they used to cook meals, it was always a sign of respect from the family. Like, you knew that you could take simple ingredients or even complicated ingredients, put something together and kind of make it your own. And now that I'm older now and I've kind of taken the mantle as the chef of the family, I'm still taking those recipes that my aunt's mother and grandmother made, but I'm kind of putting my own unique twist on it. And I'm also looking for different ways each and every time to reinvent meals, because as a chef, you don't want to always cook the same thing over and over because you
Right.
get bored. You kind of want to reinvent the wheel, kind of reimagine things, and always constantly reinventing yourself to just make any meal or any recipe better each time.
So in that same vein, I know I found that with my family, because I kind of have that same. I have an aunt who is really the chef of the family, so she still holds the the trophy or whatever, the spot, right? She's in the
Hmm.
number one spot, and so, from time to time, I try to kind of deviate from the norm and try to make some, be a little creative with a dish or whatever the case may be. And I'll be honest, that's not always rewarded.
No.
It's not always a good thing, especially those staple meals. So have you ever ran into that where it's like you should have just left this the way it was?
So my fiance will probably tell the story 1,000 times, but when I first started getting to taking my cooking business a little bit seriously, the one food that I always struggled with was pasta.
Okay.
I'd either make my pasta way too sticky, way too salty, or it just wouldn't taste like pasta. And one thing I love and appreciate about her is that she's brutally honest with me, but she's honest to the point where she wants me to improve. So I remember the very first time I tried to make I'm gonna say it was chicken Alfredo,
Okay.
and the chicken part I got right. Alfredo part not so much. And I remember, like, it kind of reminded me of the Pancake Story, where I was actually excited to tell her about the recipe and have her eat it, and the look on her face said, "I messed up, didn't I?" But she's actually one of my biggest supporters and biggest fans when it comes to cooking, and thankfully I've gotten better with pasta. But yeah, that was a strong struggle point for me. Like, I can cook collard greens, I can cook just about anything, but pasta was a big no no at the time.
Yeah. That's funny. So, like, for me, it was I tried to do a take on chicken and waffles, and I did corn. I did pheasant and waffles. So I grilled bacon wrapped pheasant and waffles, and yeah, it didn't go over well at all. It was good. I mean, they liked it, but it was like the disappointment was I had invited everyone over for chicken and waffles.
Mm.
And when they got there, it was bacon wrapped pheasant, and they were like, "This ain't no chicken and waffles."
Yeah, they'll be honest with you. They'll tell you the truth, man.
Oh yeah. That's one thing your family will break it down for you. So speaking of family, I know for me, one of the biggest hurdles that I have is right now it's just my wife and I at home. We have two sons, but they're both grown and off on their own, and so of course that kind of limits my cooking because my wife's not a big eater. Of course, I don't want to gain 50 pounds just because I'm cooking. So how do you manage putting out content while still, feeding your family?
Well, one of the things I like about cooking is that when I make food, I tend to make it for pretty much everybody, despite the fact that they'll tell me, "Oh, I'm not hungry right now. I don't want to eat," but they'll come with their little plates and get themselves a little bit of what I'm making.
Right.
But it is kind of hard with the pandemic because realistically, I would love to have big family gatherings and have my mom over, my siblings and grandparents over. But unfortunately, it's just, myself, my fiance, and my boys. So it does kind of limit me in a sense where I can cook meals, but it won't be big meals like I want. I'll make like a mac and cheese or like a soul food meal here and there, but I kind of have to limit, what I'm making so this way food doesn't necessarily go to waste.
Right. Right. Yeah, see, that's our issue. Is like I made enchiladas tonight, and I know that's gonna be pretty much what we eat until probably Sunday, because there's only two of us, and you can only eat so many times.
Right.
So it kind of stifles my creativity because I can't cook something new every day. So I have to sometimes hoard content, so it looks like I'm putting stuff out there, even though I haven't cooked in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So let's get to the food,
Okay.
because again, the like I said, I can't reconcile in my mind how this wasn't created from a from Cordon Bleu or some fancy cooking school, because this is absolutely incredible. Tell me about this dish.
Sure. So, for those of you who may not know, today is actually National Potato Day,
Okay.
and I want to give a quick shout out to a chef. His name is One Stop Shop. He's actually on Instagram and TikTok, so please go follow him. But he did a baked potato video where he did a Philly cheesesteak baked
Okay.
potato. And as I was looking at his page, I was trying to get some ideas for what could I do for a baked potato. And I've seen, so his Philly cheesesteak baked potato. I've seen loaded baked potatoes, twice stuck baked potatoes, but I never saw a breakfast baked potato.
Mm.
So this was, believe it or not, this was actually thought of and made in about an hour.
Wow.
I actually made this today. I kind of had an idea for a bacon, egg, and cheese, but I wanted to, of course, reinvent something and do something different. So I decided to make a twice stuffed potato. So what I did was I originally ate the potato first, about 45 minutes or so. Took the potato out, let it cool a bit. I mashed the inside, baked that again with some cheese and bacon on top. And then I put some hollandaise, my own special white sauce, and 2 poached eggs to kind of give it that effect and that look. And it was kind of hard to plate at first because, a potato doesn't have that sturdy of a base. So
Right.
I didn't want to risk everything falling apart. So luckily I was able to kind of even things out a bit to where the egg was able to stay on top. And then of course, once you cut into a poached egg, if you cook it the right way, all the yolk comes out. So it kind of takes away from some of that volume of the egg, which
Right.
helped to plate it perfectly as it did.
That looks and everyone watching it said the same thing. Dope discussions with Erica says that, oh my God, it looks amazing.
Thank you.
Saya says it looks so good. Kicking it with cousin Cassie says yummy. I agree 100%. And it looks like something. So you came up with this idea. You created it within an hour or an hour total, but it looks like something that I would see on a brunch menu here in Atlanta, right? I mean, it looks like a professional meal. Like,
Thank you.
It's crazy. Let's see. There was another one that I saw. Oh, here we go. So I love banana pancakes, man. Tell me about this. That looks incredible.
So this was another meal that I came up with in an hour. I had a taste for simple story, of course, me and pancakes. I'm pretty sure we know my history with pancakes, but I went out grocery shopping that day, and it was one of those moments where you spend all this money grocery shopping, you have all this food in the house, but you don't know what to cook.
Yeah.
And I actually had a taste for pancakes, but me, and I'm pretty sure people who know me will tell you this, I don't like to cook just ordinary meals. I don't like to just make, pancake syrup and butter. I like to kind of take it a bit over the top. And in previous recipes, I've done salted caramel pancakes. I've done strawberry shortcake pancakes, but I've never actually done bananas Foster pancakes. So I thought to myself, maybe that's something that kind of goes well together because you have, all these different levels of sweet from the banana, the brown sugar, the caramel, and the pancake. And it actually looks quite mesmerizing if you look at the loop over and over again.
It does.
And actually kind of getting hungry right now looking at it.
You're right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's actually one of my favorite recipes. Pancakes are always a go-to breakfast for me. And the one thing I like about this recipe in particular is that the pancake batter was actually made from scratch.
Okay.
Which a lot of my recipes are.
I was going to ask, are you a purist? Are you one of those chefs that, nothing can come from a box or nothing, everything's got to be made from scratch?
No, not everything needs to be made from scratch. As you just scrolled, I actually did a bacon, egg, and cheese taco with
Oh,
Grand's biscuits. Yes, little down.
down. I'm sorry.
Yeah, down. Yeah, yeah. Two. I think you're almost there. No, it's a little further up.
Oh,
A little further up. There we go.
oh,
The
right here.
one right there. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So shout out to Duran the chef also. So as you saw from his videos, I feel like he's the king of tacos. He's done
Man.
pancake tacos. He's done chicken Alfredo tacos, and he inspired me to actually create this dish here.
Yeah.
And all it really is breakfast sausage, scrambled eggs, cheese, and Grand's biscuits.
Right.
But just going back to your original question, I cook anything from a box. I have no issue with it. I feel like some of the best recipes come from the box. The only reason why I try to cook from scratch a lot of the times is because personally I like to challenge myself.
Okay.
Because with everything that's going on in the world, especially with this pandemic, there's going to be food shortages. Like I remember one time I was actually looking to make breakfast for my family, and the store that I usually go to, they were out of brioche bread.
Okay.
So I thought to myself, okay, well, it shouldn't be that hard to make. So I looked it up online, the recipe for brioche bread, and kind of added some of my own elements to it. And that's how I ended up coming up with my brioche buns, brioche bread. And to me, it's just about challenging myself to know how to do different things, because you never know when you could be called upon. Let's say if I were to enter a cooking competition and I didn't have, Grand's biscuits or brioche bread on hand, I'd have to know how to make it myself and kind of show my versatility.
Got it. Yeah, that looks amazing. So
Thank you.
let's head over to your TikTok. So I saw, let's see. Oh, here we go. So my wife is a lobster junkie. So this is right up our alley.
Crab, some garlic, some mayonnaise, Dijon mustard, and some seasoning. Give it a mix. So now we're going to show some love to our lobster tails. Split the lobster tails down the middle. Make sure they're properly seasoned. I use cayenne pepper, some salt and pepper, and I use some Old Bay. Once it's seasoned, add a little bit of olive oil to the tops, and go ahead and put your stuffing in. 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. Now you're going to go ahead and scoop off the potatoes, mash them, put the potatoes back in, go ahead and put your stuffing on, 20 minutes, make sure your steak is basted, go ahead and plate your plate, steak first, lobster tail, stuffed baked potato, bam.
You make it look so simple, like why am I not doing this? Why can't I just do this? This is crazy. Let's see.
Breakfast Sammy. Hash browns in.
I definitely want to talk about this.
15 minutes. Add bacon, egg, and avocado. Eat like a savage boy. Air fryer breakfast.
So let's talk about utensils, because my wife actually bought me an air fryer, and I love my air fryer. I put every damn thing in there. There's two things I love: my air fryer and my Instant Pot. Mm-hmm. Those are two probably of my favorite utensils in the kitchen. But being a traditionalist, or being someone that is a where you don't feel like you're cooking, because it kind of feels like you're cheating, because both the Instant Pot and the air fryer they're kind of shortcuts. What's your thought process on that?
So I'll be perfectly honest with you. When the whole air fryer craze came about, I could not understand why people were cooking with air fryers. I always called them the Gen Z version of the George Foreman grill. And up until about a month and a half ago, I became a fan of the air fryer. Like you said, I like the traditional methods. Most of the time when I cook, I'll cook with the cast iron pan or a pot.
Yeah.
But man, you could just throw, chicken wings in there. You could throw French fries and just push a couple of buttons, and it just comes out just as good as you frying it.
Yeah.
Not as good, but to me, it still comes out good enough. And I'm a fan of air fryers now. I'm not gonna lie.
Man, I've probably made every type of chicken wing known to man in my air fryer.
Yeah.
I don't think I've put chicken wings in the in grease in years. Well, not years, but at least months since my air fryer. Dope discussion with Erica says the air fryer is the adult version of the easy bake oven. Yes, it is.
It doesn't take as long as an easy bake oven, but yeah, you're right.
It doesn't. So let's talk about the profession, cooking as a profession. So you do private parties and date nights and things like that, correct?
Right, correct.
Okay. And so in your podcast, you said you had never really worked at a restaurant. Is working at a restaurant or opening maybe a restaurant one day, is that a goal? If not, what is your goal?
So I actually have two goals. One is to own and operate a food truck and provide that experience locally and hopefully in the future to different states and cities nationwide. The other is to have a unique cooking experience. So I'll have more details for you guys as it comes, but in mid-October, I'm actually going to have a Cooking with Pat Lee experience, which will be a ticketed event. And you could actually come for full course of meals. So it'll be appetizers, it will be dinner, it will be drinks, it'll be dessert, and we'll do random activities such as game nights, different things like that. More details will come on that soon. As far as a restaurant goes, I've always said from the beginning I didn't want to own a restaurant, and I have nothing against people who want to run restaurants, but it's a lot of risk when it comes to that. It's a lot of people that you have to manage. It's a lot of overhead that you have to be responsible for. And it was initially a goal that I kind of wanted to do a little bit, kind of 50-50 on it initially. But when the pandemic hit and I saw like a lot of small businesses were closing and restaurants had to get hit the hardest, unfortunately, it just like reassured me that maybe that wasn't in the best interest for me to own and operate a restaurant.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's the business part, but it's also, I know how picky and finicky I can be as just someone who likes to go out to eat, especially when it comes to the experience of eating. So for me, if I go to a high-end restaurant, I don't mind paying premium prices, but I want premium food and I want premium service. And I know I've had to remind myself that the server or the person that's serving me the food is not the owner, right? That's not someone who has a vested stake or interest in the restaurant. They're there to serve food, get a paycheck, and go home. And so I think it's unfair sometimes when we, this cancel culture thing, which I'm not totally against it, especially if you deserve it. But if you have bad service from from the wait staff, I don't think the whole restaurant should be canceled, especially if it's a good restaurant. Because again, that's somebody that is working. That's an employee. That's not the owner of the restaurant. As opposed to those situations where you have the owner doing something disrespectful, then shut it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I love the food truck concept just because it feels like you're getting something cool eating off of a food truck. You know what I mean? Like we just had a Caribbean festival here in Atlanta, and it was just a bunch of Caribbean style food trucks, and everyone was pretty much serving the same thing, but it just felt really different. I don't know, ordering food from a food truck. So do you have a style of cooking that you will kind of feature on the food truck, or is it going to be kind of a anything goes type thing?
Right now it's kind of anything goes. While I'm still trying to figure out how the food truck is going to be operated, I'm also still trying to figure out what my niche is going to be in terms of cooking, because I feel like when people own and operate restaurants, the most successful ones are the ones that kind of have certain menu items down packed. And I don't want to have a food truck where I'm just saying, oh, I'll create soul food, or I'll have seafood, or I'll have Asian cuisine. I want to have specific items that are perfect, that when you taste the food, you'll know that that's my specialty.
Right. Yeah. So kind of like the Cheddar Bay biscuits at Red Lobster. Like that's
Right.
like I don't like anything else there but the Cheddar Bay biscuits.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's important, you know, because I think of restaurants like the Cheesecake Factory, which you know I love, but the menu is so expansive that it's just it feels like it's too much.
It's like almost 20 pages.
Yeah, but everything is pretty good. But I can tell you, I'm never going to eat some of the dishes that they serve there. But that's, you know, that's me. So having that variety when you already have the name and you already have the, you know, the customer base, I guess that works. But I agree with you. If I'm coming to, you know, if I know Chef Pat Lee's in town, that means his world famous fill in the blank is going to be served. And so that's awesome. So how much of New York, you said you grew up in Harlem, how much of that influences your cooking?
Well, a lot of my cooking, I don't know. That's a good question. I kind of feel like I bring a lot of that New York ambition and New York hustle when it comes to my cooking, because as somebody who, like I said, never has been in a restaurant, never has been to culinary school, I feel like I have more to prove than most people.
Mhm.
And another thing about my cooking and my platform is that while I have a lot of followers, I don't have the massive like millions and thousands just yet. So I feel like because of all those things, it gives, and because, you know, I'm from New York, it gives me the drive to want to do better, want to do more, want to make sure that I stand out, which is why whenever you see my food, while it may be plated like a classically trained chef, it surprises a lot of people to know that that's not something that came from a classically trained chef. But that's the ambition that I get from being a New Yorker, because in New York, they have the saying, if you can accomplish it in New York, you can accomplish it anywhere.
Yeah, concrete jungle, dreams are made of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, I've cooked for people from New York, and one of the things that I find so interesting is that when it comes to ethnic food, and Duran and I were talking about this as well. That's one of those things you got to get right, right? You if you're going to venture into certain ethnic dishes, you know, like Ethiopian food, Puerto Rican food, you know, whatever. You kind of have to get it right, otherwise you're gonna hear about it, right?
Right.
How often do you venture into other cultures? I mean, being from New York, or being, you know, having that, there's such a melting pot there. You know, that was the only place I've ever been where you could literally eat all around the world within, you know, three city blocks, right? So how two questions: how often do you venture into other cultures when you're cooking? And then the other question would be, what's your litmus test for whether or not you got it right?
Good question. So I tend to dabble in a lot of ethnic cooking, not as much as I want to. And the only reason why is because I'm somebody who feels that if I'm cooking an ethnic dish, I want to treat it with the respect that it deserves and make every element of the dish taste as if it was created by that ethnicity. So I wouldn't want to cook something that's missing an ingredient. Like, for example, and it'll actually be shown on Taco Tuesday this Tuesday. I'm doing burrito tacos,
Okay.
but I don't want to leave out any elements of the consomme, any elements of the meat, any elements of the peppers. So every single bit of that recipe is going to be made as if someone who's an expert at making burrito tacos could actually make it. As far as my litmus test goes, typically I would only say that the only person who judges it is my family, unfortunately, and that's only because of the situation that we're in now with this pandemic. Right. I judge it based off the fact that they like the food, but I am curious to know if I were to create an ethnic dish, burrito tacos, for example, would someone who's used to making it actually say that it's good? Would they tell me, okay, it's missing something? But again, that's all a part of the cooking process, is that you want to make sure that whatever you're cooking, you're giving it the respect and attention that it deserves.
Absolutely. I mean, I've even learned to stop using words like authentic. If I deviate from the authentic recipe, I feel almost like it's disrespecting the culture by claiming that this is something that I know I've changed, right?
Right.
But if I do try to make an authentic dish, I said it on the previous show. I made arroz con pollo because I spent 3 years, lived in Puerto Rico for 3 years when I was in the military, and so I still have friends that are from there and that live there. And so I made this video that I put on my on Tony Massey Cooks my page. And before I posted it, I sent it to my friends just to verify that I didn't leave anything out, everything right, because I didn't want anyone to feel like, oh my God, you know, this guy disrespected arroz con pollo. So when it comes to your, I know you're not doing it probably much during the pandemic, but when you were doing like the date night thing, walk me through the process. Do you offer a prefixed menu, or do you kind of find out, hey, what do you guys want to eat? How do you set that whole thing up?
So typically what I do is all of my date night meals include a bottle of wine based off of your taste of wine, flowers, some chocolate covered strawberries, and then it's a prefixed menu. But I give you the option from what you want to pick. If you're looking for surf and turf, if you're looking for something like a charcuterie board, if you kind of want to get down and dirty with some fried chicken or a burger, I make that, accustomed to your experience. One particular date night meal that I made was actually for my fiance and myself, was a charcuterie board. And it was actually the very first time I made a charcuterie board. And that was only because we had went to a winery for my birthday. And I liked it so much, we just became big fans of charcuterie.
Yeah.
And since then, that was something that I kind of included on the menu because, of course, when it comes to the pandemic, a lot of places are either limited in capacity or closed. But I want to offer that experience that you could have a charcuterie board and wine tasting at home.
That's awesome. Your fiance, is she a cook as well?
She's a cook. She's a really good cook.
So
I'm better though, but yeah.
I was gonna ask the question. I don't know. She must not be there.
Now she's in the room probably watching, but yeah, she can't do nothing while I'm on camera.
Well, you're definitely getting some love here from the comment section. I want to thank everybody for joining us. If you're just joining us, I'm here with Chef Pat Lee. Chef Pat Lee is an incredible chef. We just went through some of his social media pages, so please go and follow him everywhere. He's easy to find. It's Cooking with Pat Lee. That's where he is on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And then, of course, make sure you subscribe to and listen to the Cast Iron Podcast. If you like podcasts and you like food, I promise you are going to like both of these. This man is an amazing storyteller, and he's cooking while he's telling the story. And you can hear the water and the pots and the pans and all of that going on in the background. And it's almost like, I used to have a friend who would come over when I'd cook, and she just pour a glass of wine and sit there, and we just talk while I cooked. And it was almost like that. So it's really cool. So yeah, I wanted to make sure you got the love that is getting out to you. Angela Lee Scott, who obviously is mom, says that's my mama. Son, Chef Pat Lee. Love you. He's always been awesome in everything he's done.
Thanks, Mom.
Gotta love moms, man.
Absolutely.
Gotta love mom. The Paradox Experience says New York introduces you to so much food. Yes, they do. They also say the restaurant time. We talked about that. Hair Love T says, hey, Pat.
Hey.
Keisha Linton. No, you ain't. LOL.
That's my fiance.
Oh, is that your fiance? I guess she is listening. Paradox Experience said shot fired. Yes, they were. They were fired and returned. John Singletary, one of my co-hosts from the Real Shop Talk, said, gotta love mom. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
My other co-host is in here too, I think. Yeah, Derek Jones is in here too, giving love. I appreciate y'all, man. Dope Discussions with Erica podcast says great guest, great show. I agree 100%. So what's on? So we know that you have the cooking experience coming. We know that you have you're throwing around the ideas for the food truck. What about the immediate future? What can we, for those of us who are following you, what can we look forward to?
More podcast episodes coming up. More opportunities to showcase my talents on TikTok and Instagram. And also, I guess I can announce it here. I'm actually auditioning for MasterChef in October. So wish me the best of luck.
Awesome. Very nice. I'm glad I caught you when I did. Well, we'll definitely be watching, man.
Thank you.
So with those cooking shows, for me, they're a little intimidating, not because I don't think I can cook, but it feels like everything is off the cuff. And I want to believe that it's not really like that. But as much fun as it would be to have access to all of those ingredients, the idea that my food is being, I have to come off the head, and then my food is being scrutinized at such a macular or micro level just feels intimidating. What's your plan to kind of, go in there with that focus to win?
So I'm not sure if you're a fan of Jay-Z, but one thing that I've always admired about his musical style is that he's always said when he goes into the studio, he doesn't write anything down. He doesn't have like a verse or lyrics written already.
Yep.
He just hears the beat and then he just goes with the flow and boom, there's a song. And that's how I've always treated cooking. Like, of course, I'd say about 10% of the time I'll look for YouTube or social media for inspiration. But when I come up with my recipes, it's just, okay, let me look through the kitchen. Let me see what I have in my fridge. Let me see what I have in my freezer. Boom, there's a recipe. I get hungry for something and I go, okay, boom, I'm going to make this. And I'm going to take that same type of thought process to MasterChef, because even from studying the shows of the past 11, 12 seasons, I noticed that at times whenever they make a recipe, they could change it last minute, because especially if you're working in a restaurant or the cooking industry, you'll never know if you have to make a change last minute yourself. You could have somebody who says, hey, I want to order a steak. You get a steak prepared. Oh, you know what? I changed my mind. I make chicken. So you kind of have to think off your feet, kind of, step into an uncomfortable zone. But, it's just a matter of getting it done and just finding a way to do it.
Right. Well, man, we wish you all of the luck. Hopefully Gordon Ramsay takes it easy on you.
I actually hope he doesn't. I'm a big fan, so hoping he curses me out.
Well, that's one way that you'll be remembered. That's for sure. No, I think based on, and I've never tasted your food, but I've heard it and I've seen it, and based on what I've seen and heard, I definitely think you have the chops to be a very formidable competitor on MasterChef or any other show for that matter. So glad that you were able to join us here. I do want to get a couple more of these comments in, so you see them all. Wrestling Alliance Radio says best of luck. He's an awesome co-host for us.
Yes, shout out to Wrestling Alliance Radio. That's my other podcast that I'm on Apple and Spotify.
Janet Washington says, hi, Patrick. When you come to the Bronx to cook for us, are you getting requested?
That's my aunt.
Okay. And then leftovers can be the best recipe for success. I agree. Absolutely. And then Erica says, congratulations. Hope you make the show. So do I, man. So again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. This was an awesome show. You're an awesome person. And I'm so glad to be able to call you a friend now, especially if you end up getting famous. Don't get, big headed and forget where you came from.
Not yet. No, I'm kidding.
Not yet, right? Well, for you who are watching, make sure that you go right now and follow Cooking with Pat Lee.
Yes.
Chef Pat everywhere. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Cooking with Pat Lee. And then, of course, make sure you listen to the podcast. It's actually really good. And I think you're going to agree. Again, thank you so much for watching, so much for tuning in. Pat, any last words before we end the broadcast?
Just for anybody out there who's aspiring to be a chef, whether you're just starting out or you're kind of knee deep into it, just keep pushing it. We have lots of chefs out there who kind of give up on the dream because they feel as if they're not creative enough, or they may not feel like they have what it takes. But I always see it like this. If you're a content creator making food and you have 30 people who like your video, don't compare it to somebody who has 3,000. Think of it as, I have 30 people in a small room with me and they're watching me. And those same 30 people are going to end up turning into 300 people and so on and so forth. So just keep pushing yourself. Your time will come. I
agree. I got nothing else on top of that. Thanks, Chef Pat Lee, for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you join us every Thursday night at 7 p.m. We're going to talk to a brand new chef. And also make sure you join me on Monday nights at 8 p.m. for real shop talk with the fellas. Just subscribe to the channel. You'll be able to catch everything that I'm doing here. Follow me on all my social medias as well, Tony Massey Cooks, and I will see you next time.